everybody out there on Offsite Dirt. My name is Karen Benner, and this show is Building Better with Karen, where I like to bring awareness to the people and organizations who are making a positive impact on the built environment's role for a healthier people and planet. All of my guests that I will feature are working on product innovations, workforce development, affordable housing solutions, community engagement, financial models, all sorts of other really exciting topics related to building better. And I'm so excited to be here today with Bill Spohn, who is an ally right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I am based and work out of. One of my fellow community members who is also very passionate about building better homes and creating a better industry for all of us. And so welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Welcome, Karen. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be your first guest. Wow. What an honor.
Well, I'm so honored that you were excited to be my first guest.
Yeah, I jumped on it pretty quick, huh?
You did, absolutely. Yes, for the audience sake, I want to let you know that Bill responded to my email request, I believe within about 20 minutes, and said, yes, absolutely, I would love to be on your show. So I was very, very grateful. And so the reason that Bill was one of the first people that came to mind to feature on my show is because I have had the honor to tour a home that he and his wife built right here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that is a high performance modular home. And I want to give him the opportunity to talk about that experience with all of you. So my first question, Bill, is why was it important to you to build a high performance home, and especially to incorporate modular construction into that decision?
Well, thank you again for having me on. And I think why was it important to build a home, high performance home? It's like I knew too much. My background is being trained as an engineer, and then after a couple of jobs, I started working tangential to home performance, building tools for weatherization, and then kind of sucked into the vacuum of home performance. It just made so much sense. And then I worked for a company that made HVAC tools, and I'm like, better homes makes better HVAC. These two things go together so much hand in hand. This home performance, total home, house as a system. This is really great. Then when my wife and I decided, hey, we got to think about like when we retire, where we're going to live like geographically, and then where we're going to live like specifically. And I think this will be the first and last house we ever build, because we're of that age. We probably won't build another one. But it was like, well, I'm going to start talking amongst my community and see what's really the best approach, the best way to go. And we did lean towards passive house very strongly, started to learn a lot about that. And then we took these thoughts to the Pittsburgh Home Show, and there were a number of architects there. We sat through a session on design build, and I won't name who they were, but it's pretty much every booth we went to from an architect, we said, we're interested in passive house. They're like, what's that? Oh, wow, this is disappointing. It's got to be built locally, and how are we going to do this? So we Googled online and found EcoCraft, who's a primarily modular construction builder, said they had passive house training. They could build passive house type projects. We're like, that's really cool. So we contracted with a passive house architect locally and found that the perfect attributes of a passive house were too expensive for us. So we decided to go, and people may have heard of this concept called the pretty good house.
Yeah.
I looked that up.
Yeah.
Mike Maines and his colleagues up in Emily Mottram, and I forgot the other guy's name. I interviewed him on my podcast, but they up in Maine, they've got this idea, these points, like 20 points to a pretty good house, not completely passive. But we took like the best elements of a passive house construction, airtight construction, triple pane windows, the air tightness, the air sealing, solar orientation, all those kind of things, and started to engage with EcoCraft. And they were like, they knew what we were talking about. They spoke our language.
Awesome.
They understood it. And then we really started to learn about modular construction and the fact that they're built in a factory where all the materials are undercover, where there's jigs and fixtures and there's the same workforce, and the work's presented to them. They don't have to get up on ladders or scaffolding.
Yeah.
It's easy to access the work. And we just felt like we're going to get a much better quality of construction. And this is in the words of Elliot Fabrice Sr., who's one of the founders of EcoCraft, your house basically survives a 7.8, Richter scale earthquake being transported to your site. So we have to build them rock solid and rigid because it comes by truck. So all those things, quality control, rigid construction, and a really a builder / architect who really understands what we wanted. So that's why we built high performance, and it catered towards what, I had learned over the years would be an important thing to do.
Sure. So for context for our audience, can you give us an idea of what years this was, just so that we're familiar?
Yeah. So we bought the land in 2018, and we started the design process probably in the fall of 2019, and got everything rolling. The house was built, actually the house was built in the fall of 2019, during the month of October, up in Strattonville, Pennsylvania, at the Structural Modular factory. And and then the house got brought to the site, set on the foundation, and the finishing work had to stop because of COVID. So it got set on like January 20th, 2020. And then, things kind of ground to a halt there in early March. So it slowed down our occupancy until November of 2020. So now we're talking in April of 2023, and we've been here, I guess it's 18 months, something like that.
Awesome. Well, I love that you already brought up the pretty good house as well. That was, I didn't see that coming, but I just got to meet Emily last month at a conference. She was a keynote speaker, and got a copy of the book. I haven't been able to dig into it yet. My book stack is way too tall, and I'm a relatively slow reader, but I am very excited to dig into that one. And I love that they have taken all of these really great concepts and brought them down to a level that is a little bit more attainable and affordable for more folks. It sounds like even for you, who knew how important this was to you, that passive house was just a little bit out of reach, and that is the reality. So also, I mentioned to you, and I'm going to say to our audience, and especially for anybody in the Pittsburgh market who ends up listening, I had shared with you that I had gone to the Pittsburgh Home Show last month in an effort to see how many contractors I could meet who were talking about high performance and talking about building science, architects, contractors, et cetera. And I was pretty disappointed myself. And I know that they are in this community. I have met all of you. I know you're out there, and we need to get you to the home show in future years. We need to get more of our community out there at the home show, so that more and more folks are aware that there is a better way to build. There's better homes out there.
I'll make a suggestion, like a collaborative booth, because if the booth price is too high and you don't think you're going to get enough return on the investment, 3 or 4 people get together, like-minded, and call it whatever, some kind of consortium to bring the message out to the public.
I love it. Great
One
idea.
thing I want to say about Emily's book, there's a picture of my house in it. So the modular. So I give you something to look for. Maybe that'll get you into reading the book.
Definitely. Yes. I'll go find that right away. So sticking with the decision with your house, I know you already mentioned your background in, you've got your shirt there, True Tech Tools. You're obviously in the industry of selling HVAC equipment and all of the other equipment related to energy audits and so forth. Can you talk about how you were able to incorporate your personal flavor and specifications and equipment into the project? How did that work with EcoCraft and your architect and with the factory?
Sure. So even before we had like a lot of formal designs in place, we started to think about what would be important for us. And we found the property, and we really wanted the house to flatter the view. So the design was very important. That affected where we put solar panels, which ended up being on the ground because I didn't like personally the solar panels. We wanted the house facing front to collect a lot of solar energy in the winter time passively. And we've had days here where it's been 80 degrees with nothing running in December just because of solar collection.
Wow.
So that was one aspect. The other aspect was doing a proper load calculation, understanding what the energy needs would be for the house. And because we didn't have like an existing house to test, we had to have target specifications and, strive to meet those specifications. Ours was around, we wanted to hit 1 air change per hour at 50 CFM, one ACH 50. If anyone listening is familiar with building performance, that's pretty good. Passive house is 0.6. So it was a little bit less tight than passive, but we modeled our house around that. And then we actually went ahead and did 3 modelings. We did one with the standard one that HVAC contractors use called CoolCalc. We found somebody through our network who could do a passive house planning package, which is a little bit more detailed. And a friend of mine in California who wrote a new 3D software for modeling called Quick Model, Russ King, did a complementary model for me. All the solutions converged on 2-ton air source heat pump would be sufficient for heating and cooling needs year round for the house.
And just for reference, what's the square footage?
The basement is conditioned, so I'm going to include that in the number, 4,400.
Wow, 2 tons for 4,400 square feet.
Right. So it's 22 to 1 ton, 2,200 square feet to 1 ton. That's an unusual number if you go check that.
Yes, absolutely. So you settled on a 2-ton unit, and then what else about the actual mechanicals? I mean, I've been to your home.
Yeah.
Bill's mechanical room is about the size of the condo that I lived in Washington, D.C. for 11 years. It's huge. It's beautiful. So yeah, tell us what's in there. What are you excited about?
Sure. So I did that because I would never live it down if I ever showed it publicly to my customers in HVAC. Like, you could have built as a bigger mechanical room. No question now. It's 14 by 11. There's plenty of room. Everything's spaced apart. So we have it's a 2-ton ducted mini split. So there's a coil and there's an air handler, like a regular kind of furnace air conditioner. But it's a mini split unit outside. It happens to be Detson, which is the brand name we use. That was one of the favorites of our builder. And also I have a relationship with Detson, and they actually provided the equipment. So just in transparency, they provided it for free for me because it was sort of like one of their first low or high performance homes in the US. They're based out of Canada. They also have a zone control system. So we have 4 different zones to feed the different areas of the house, because there are some large spaces, some small spaces that are on the north side, the south side. So we do have sort of the need to provide zoning. We also, of course, because we were on that trend towards a really tight house, we had to have ventilation, dedicated mechanical ventilation. And I wanted it dedicated with its own ducting, so that there were 2 independent systems. And my concept was the mechanical ventilation system controls the fresh air, and the heating and cooling system conditions the fresh air. So instead of using one fan to do the other and passing over coils and doing all kinds of stuff, it's like, we'll get fresh air in here by hook or by crook, and we'll condition it with another system. So there's 2 independent systems. They both have ECM motors in them. Their consumption is really low. But the one that I chose was a CERV, conditioning ERV, made by Build Equinox. Ty Newell and his small company there in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, build these self-contained units. They have 1/3 of a ton heat pump in them. So the exhaust air, the exhaust air in the winter time, we're capturing that heat in the coil of a heat pump, and then using that on the incoming airstream to warm the air coming in. So it isn't sort of like heat transfer through a material or a media. It's very deliberate. with a mechanical system. It does allow, in the summertime for a little bit of dehumidification to take place. And it's controlled, and it's on demand by set point. So it has a CO2 sensor in it and a VOC sensor in it. And I have mine to trigger when the aggregate level of the house reaches 800 ppm CO2, the system runs until it brings it down by about 100, and then it allows it to creep up again. So we're always constantly in a lower level of CO2 for the house.
Wow. That's amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, what a fantastic set of equipment and diagnostics to be able to control and understand that, and not something that every homeowner in America is going to necessarily need or want or be interested in. But it sounds like it can be a set it and forget it. That if somebody is working with a contractor who is skilled and able to set it and explain enough to the homeowner, to at least be able to monitor it. Maybe they're educated on turning these systems off when they're leaving town for a couple weeks in order to, reduce running them unnecessarily. But that's really cool. So that leads us into, the next big topic, which is data collection. And,
Sure.
What have you learned? I know, based on what you've already said, that you are monitoring how this home is actually performing, because
Sure.
that's important to you. So tell us how it's performing.
Well, I want to go back just one step to mechanical systems, and that's we have a heat pump water heater and a
Oh,
heat
yeah.
pump clothes dryer, because the heat pump water heater, basically takes heat from within the basement, turns it into hot water, transfers it to the water tank. So there's no exhaust needed. So I've got my ventilation requirements under control. The same thing with the heat pump clothes dryer, no tie to outdoor air. So it doesn't bring in air when it's running. It doesn't push air out. So all of the conditioned air stays as conditioned air. The only exception is the kitchen range hood, and that's used, very sporadically, and that's a direct vent outside. So it was, getting control of the expensive air we were creating with the heating and cooling system, and really kind of filtering it and really keeping it in good condition. We put money into that. Let's keep that fresh air for as long as we can and not just blow it out. And in
So
the long
smart.
run, it'll pay back. So
Yeah, so smart. And also, I'm assuming this means that you avoided at least 2 penetrations in your building
that's the other
envelope.
thing. Exactly.
Which we all love,
Right.
the idea of that for lots of
So you're
reasons.
gonna have to go back and ask that other question again, because I lost it.
Yeah. So what are you learning about how your
Okay.
home is performing compared to you invested more than probably the average person into preliminary diagnostics, energy models. And I know you're monitoring it. Tell us how it's doing. Tell us what you've learned, and also a little bit about the tools that you are using to monitor it.
Sure. So I'll just start with energy coming into the house. So we're connected to Duquesne Light through a net meter. We do have 32 solar panels producing nominally 12 megawatts DC a year. And in 2021, we produced a little bit more than we used. So we were net zero energy, time shifted because, we produce more at certain points of the day, send it to the grid, take it back off at night when we're not producing.
Sure.
So I have an electrical monitor, an Emporia View monitor, 16 circuits hooked up inside my load center, the panel box. And I can watch it from an app and look at the data on a screen, look at it online. And I'll say what I learned from monitoring electrical energy, I put it in a month after we moved in. I learned that our heat pump was not working correctly. It had gone into resistance mode. There was a cracked flare joint where it leaked the refrigerant out. And so it was set up to go into resistance heating, direct electrical heating instead of heat pump mode. And it was doing that and consuming 3 times more energy. And so I finally figured out what was going on. And we had to have a replacement done on that, which the builder helped out and covered that. So Yeah, that was I would have been surprised maybe further down the road by looking at the energy bills. Like, I have a target, we're going to come close to net zero, but we were blowing it right there the first few years.
Yeah. Wow. What an amazing, that's so amazing that you found that out before you had overused all of this energy. There would have been no other way to have known. And that was going to be one of my questions. It sounds like that's true. Wow.
And I'll say, like, going back to something you said before, and then this topic here about, I think there's a role for a new breed of energy advisor. And with the way all the systems have this digital information available, that I think there could be a person that helps to manage home energy by receiving, their customers' data streams, analyzing what's going on, then give them either advice or actually going and fixing the problem. So it's, I'm going to just, regular consumer might not have spotted that for a long, long time.
Yeah, sure.
Or
That's
just
a
would have
great
put up with
idea.
it and just said that's it. So I keep throwing this idea out there to people in the industry saying we got to start a new designation of energy auditor, not to audit to fix, but to audit to maintain. That to me is a gap that's there right now.
Yeah. That I think that makes a lot of sense. What was the name that you think that this position should be called? What is this designation or the title?
I guess I haven't thought a lot about that. It's like, I don't know. It's sort of like in a commercial side, like a lot of things are like cascading down from the commercial world. So it's like an energy manager in a building
Okay.
is responsible for making sure all the systems are, they check the data to make sure the systems are running correctly. Nothing's, come out of repair or needs maintenance. So I don't know, home energy manager, something like that.
Yeah. Residential facilities manager.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Okay. What else on in terms of monitoring and diagnostics?
Sure. So the solar array is connected to 2 inverters, and I'm connected through the web to watch the inverters on pretty much like I get like a 15-minute delay of output, and I can look back at historical information. And I at one point I was looking at the pattern for a day, and the output was rising towards noon, and then it dropped in half and stayed there for the rest of the day. And then the next day it was half. One of the inverters had shut down on a false arc fault code. I'm naming names here. I hope it's okay. And
Sure.
Infinity is our solar provider. Alerted them to this, and they got somebody out here and fixed it. It happened again with the same inverter like 2 months later, but they caught it more quickly, because we're sort of like sensitized to looking at those things. But I look at my solar profiles every day. Like some people look at the stock market charts, I look at the solar profiles.
Awesome.
And something I learned from that, I'll say, is that, solar availability is not consistent. It can vary a lot from day to day. Max I've ever seen here is 81 kilowatt hours produced in a day from our system. Minimum is 1, but it ranges all the way through that number. And it's almost always being produced. There's never 0 being produced, even when it's gloomy, even when there's some snow on the panels and things like that. And it's possible to do it in our market, Pittsburgh area, with a home that's tuned to the solar system. So this gets into the home performance. And if somebody's listening who's, not in new construction, but looking at existing construction and thinking about heat pumps because of all the incentives that are coming down the pike from the Inflation Reduction Act, you need to have a heat pump ready home. Those are my words of advice. If you don't, you may be dissatisfied with the performance, because heat pumps put out more continuous, but energy at a lower level, which actually is more comfortable if you're in the right kind of house. If your house dynamics, your home performance is off, it's it's leaky or thermally leaky somehow, or leaking air, A heat pump, you're going to need a bigger heat pump, which means more energy consumed, which may take you away from getting renewables. So you got to start with how much you consume and understand that. That's why I would recommend people get energy monitors,
Yeah.
because and they're like $180. You can start understanding how you use energy. One of my employees at TrueTech got one, hooked it up, and realized his kids' gaming computers were like a quarter of their energy bill.
Oh
And
my
it's like,
gosh.
no, we're putting those on timers now. They just can't run 24/7. When you're using them, fine. But when you're not using them, they got to be shut down. They consume a lot of power. So I think understanding your energy consumption, understanding how energy is used, and then to look for improvements going down the road.
Yeah. And that's so important. And something that I talk a lot about is that, homes are complicated, they're
Yeah.
unique. The people living in them are behaving very differently. And I think that is one of the major challenges of, the residential industry, is that particularly when you're dealing with existing buildings, is, for contractors to come in and really help people make decisions for what they think is going to be better performance, and or lower energy bills or better health, whatever they're after. That so often the conversation is very siloed, and it's also happening without the data. And so the idea, and maybe this is another business opportunity, or new job opportunity for our industry, of having a service provider to really be an advocate for the homeowner, help them understand their data. Like you said, okay, first thing we're going to do is understand how you're living, what collect data, so that we can make an informed decision, and we're not just operating off of assumptions, or what your neighbors did, or what your parents told you that you should do. And then helping to keep that consumer, that homeowner, educated throughout the process of engaging all of the various contractors that might be involved in better home performance. So we've got lots of ideas, folks, for new jobs in our industry. We'll keep you posted.
Yeah. And I visited, we talked before about a contractor I visited with last week, who's like who does the total home performance, house as a system concept, totally ingrained into their thinking, is doing very, very well, because they can solve the full gamut of issues within, and they mainly deal with existing homes. But like you said, homes are complicated. And I look at this contract and say, like, they didn't do anything special, except they did it all. Then they understood what they were doing, and they believed what they would do would make a difference for their customers. And it's paid very well for them. So they got the training, they got the tools, and they understand the house of the system, and they take care of customers. And it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is a beautiful thing. And you're right. When you shared about this a little bit with me earlier this week, I'm very intrigued as well. We'll have to circle back to that, see how much of that you're ready to share with our audience today, or if that's a future
Sure.
be back invite. So with your home performance,
couple
air
more.
quality, how's it going?
Couple more things we monitored, and on the air quality side. So at TrueTech, we sell a bunch of air quality monitors. I've bought other ones, but the ones that have kind of like continued to go back to, there's actually, because of the sensors installed in the CERV, the CERV, that monitors CO2, temperature, humidity, and total VOCs, TVOCs, volatile organic compounds. Those are the ones I tend to go back to and monitor more closely, to look at trends. Like I can see, like when we have more people over, the CO2 level goes up, the system runs more often. The VOC number is always remained high, and I attribute that to the fact that we have a new home and it's still outgassing, even though we did try to choose, as many materials as we could. There's still high total VOC levels. Not to the point where it makes us sick or anything, but it's just a higher number.
Interesting.
The one thing which we did have to address was radon. We built the home with a passive radon system, which is an underground pipe inside the footer, perforated to collect, under slab soil gases, and then move them up through natural, stack effect up and outside the house at the roof line. The system really wasn't pulling enough out. And even after sealing all around the slab in the basement, it was still very high levels. So fortunately, we thought ahead, knew this issue, brought in some experience from, people I've known in the industry. And we put the radon pipe in a sort of an auxiliary room outside of the air barrier of the house, but
Oh.
close to a wall outlet inside. So it's like a storage room that's not really, it's semi-conditioned. It's actually not conditioned. But since it's in the envelope, it sort of maintains temperature. So I just had to cut a hole in the wall, go in there, rewire the outlet, cut the pipe, slide in a fan, hook it up, and it took the radon level down in hours down to very acceptable levels. So we were up in as high as 20 or 30 picocuries per liter.
Wow.
EPA recommends action be taken between 2 and 4.
Yeah.
But now ours is operating like around 0.3 to 0.5. So
wow. Well, and that's another great tip for those of us in the industry that are, involved in the design and construction of homes. That I personally, I'm sure I'm guilty as well in my life as in this industry of delivering homes to people with passive radon systems that did not allow for an easy transfer to an active system when the need arises. And this is just one other opportunity for us to build better, to deliver a better product to people that we, yes, passive radon system is great. That's better already. It's required if you're in EPA radon zone 1, it's required by code, just as an FYI. If you're in 2 or 3, it's not, but it's a great idea to do it. But providing a really easy access point to be able to get that fan installed later when there's a problem will make a world of difference to your customer satisfaction.
Yeah. So again, business idea, like you say, new construction or, heavy remodel, design it in, and then as a courtesy to your customer, loan them a radon monitor for 90 days. I have one here. They're really easy to use. The digital ones, they're a couple $100. They'll do all the logging, display the values. If they have a consistently high level, have a price to go back and install the fan. And because you built the house, you know exactly how that's going to go in. It's not going to be a real heavy lift. It's probably, maybe a 2-hour job. So I think it's a great, sort of like a radon protection plan. Should be offered as an option. I mean, the monitoring should be offered just as a human courtesy, just to let people know.
Great idea. Great idea. We've got so many great ideas of how we can keep doing better. So is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of data collection? And then my follow-up is in general, based on data collection or really just the whole experience. If you were to do it again, what would you do differently?
Data collection, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, I take, some pictures like of the exterior solar shading that I've shared online to show people that it really works. The protruding shades to cut down the high summer sun, but allow in the low winter sun, that kind of thing. Snow melt patterns of the, like we have a passive house patio door that's 8x9, triple pane. And to see the snow build up on the outside of the glass and just continue to drift up and not melt away because the outside layer of glass is at the outside temperature. So there's no recession of the, and it's on a shaded side of the house. So that's data too. Pictures or data.
Yeah.
As far as doing it different, I think I would have had a little bit more stress on air sealing in the factory. And maybe insulation layout. There's really been no problems, But I'll just say, when I did take a tour and my house was under construction, I found improperly installed insulation a couple places, some places where they missed it with the caulking gun, an exterior wall that had an outlet on it. That's just like another 30 seconds and you could have nailed that. But, it's like when you find one thing, it's like, am I just like peeking under the covers? Am I going to see more? In no way at all am I saying they did a poor job, but I'm just saying a little bit more stress on that would have been beneficial, because I would have liked to see us get below the 1 ACH 50, got very close to it, but get below that. The other area is if there are a way to do acoustic modeling, because we have a lot of flat walls, flat glass, hardwood floors. The great room connects to 3 different rooms with this open space concept and goes up 21 feet in the air. So there's a lot of acoustic reflections that bother me, that if we could have done some acoustic modeling, maybe we would have changed like the angle of some surfaces, or maybe some surface material treatment that would have been, more than just like putting up those acoustic tiles, not thinking something that would have blended better.
Yeah.
But that's sort of like a minor complaint, and I'm probably picky.
Hey, you built your ultimate dream home. You deserve to be picky.
Yeah.
But that is another interesting idea. I've never really thought about the acoustics, and the interior like that, these large open floor plans that we all love to build, and these vaulted ceilings, these beautiful spaces. Again, maybe that's another business idea to, provide more attractive residential acoustic products that, you could hang a piece of art on the wall that's also helping to absorb some sound.
Or just maybe it's just like the design, like maybe putting like a some kind of change in the wall surface or angle or something like that might have changed things. So not a huge complaint, something noticed afterwards, not something people often think of, but I will kind of advise people to take a look at the work done by Robert Bean, who is a Canadian mechanical engineer. I think it's called healthyheating.com is his website. He talks a lot about the concept of mean radiant temperature for surfaces that we tried to, he was on my podcast a while ago, and I like really picked up on that strongly. If the wall temperatures aren't like pushing heat into your skin or pulling it away, you're going to feel more comfortable. So we work really hard to make sure we had the right kind of buildup of the wall cross section to minimize changes in mean radiant temperatures. You want the walls or windows to be the same temperature as the air, so that way you feel comfortable in the entire space.
Makes sense.
The other thing, so we did in study to design the house, a friend of mine, Chris Dorsey, who wrote the Residential Energy Handbook a number of years ago with John Krieger. Chris bought me a copy of a pattern language, which is a book that's sort of a staple in architecture school, but it has a series of like 414 different sort of like little monologues about aspects of design. Some of them pertain to cities, communities, exterior design, but interior design. And it just takes you through a thought process. The book was written like in 1980, but it's still really a treasure if you can find it.
I've had that book has come up in my career, but I have never had a copy or read that. That's a great reminder.
Yeah. So Marilyn and I actually read through it together, and then like brought up like 20 passages in it, 20 different little segments that we thought about and fed back to our architect, our builder, to look at incorporating those. Awesome. It's sort of like, taking all this wealth of community knowledge, but it was in a really focused place to use.
Yeah. Great. So we have talked a lot about this home. Your home is, it's amazing. As I already said, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it with you. And you have also been so gracious to share your story in many ways. People have come to your home. You've done a lot of outreach just to build awareness, which we are so grateful for. But in addition to this podcast, this very small feature here in terms of timing, where else can our audience go to learn more about your home and, other additional longer stories or more detailed topics?
Sure. So I have a blog called spohnhome.com. It's my last name, SPOHNHOME.com. I post there fairly infrequently. I keep on meaning to do more there. I tend to post more frequently on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Spohn Home. So you can find it same way, my last name and the word home mashed together. I post more frequently just because it seems to be easier. I'll see something, like I'll take a picture, or I'll snapshot the energy monitor or the solar production or something like that. And just like sharing what's on my mind about, where I come from with the whole house as a system approach, to, energy conservation, to better HVAC and building performance, that kind of thing. Just kind of share my thoughts, and with the idea of making people think. That's the whole goal. Just make people think a little bit different. Also think possible, because I think sometimes people think, and you don't have to follow exactly what I did, but I want you to think about these topics.
That's great.
So, yeah, those two places, the blog and the and my podcast. So it's called Building HVAC Science. The name comes from the fact that HVAC is impacted by the building that it sits in. And I talk with a variety of people on different topics: indoor air quality, mold. I had Joe Allen, who's written a great book. He's from the Harvard School of Health. He's written a great book about changing indoor air quality in buildings, and we have really the opportunity to do that now. Had some of my vendors, some of my friends, people that have great success stories, just a mishmash of things. So you're welcome to watch that. I think I recorded the other day episode 114. So there's a lot of them out there. Yeah.
Awesome.
And
Great.
yeah, and True Tech Tools is my company.
Yes.
And we do link to the podcast in there too.
Great. So to wrap up, because you and I did a prep phone call for this, or prep meeting for this, and what we realized is very quickly is that we could probably do 3 or 4 additional shows on all kinds of things that we're both excited to talk about. I'm wondering, I'm going to let you decide how much you are willing to share or hint at to wrap up our session today with our audience about what you might come back and talk about with me in the future. What are some exciting things that you're involved in, people you're working with, this company that you mentioned earlier, for example? What can we look to have you back talking about on the show in the future?
Sure. So one of the things is I'm working with a startup company to develop a tech solution for contractors to make it easier for them to do the work of better home performance, heat pump installation, and electrification, and give them tools that they can present to their customers. We're not making a thing for customers. We're making tools for contractor to plan projects, to educate their customers, and to give them reliable access to understanding of rebates, tax incentives, financing, loans, whatever it takes to get the project done. So we're starting to get a lot of interest in that. It's called Get Duckling, GETDUCKLING. Again, it's contractor focused. Primarily HVAC, home performance, electrical contractors would be interested in this product. So trying to go from the contractor side and do things like this to try to pull in people from the consumer side and have us meet in the middle of doing better construction and being more responsible about the use of energy in our homes.
Wonderful. I love it. I love it. We need to be serving our consumers better. We
Yeah.
need to be providing easier and more honest and holistic resources for folks to make better decisions. We need an easy button
Yeah.
for our industry, and that's one of the things that I loved, to realize yesterday when we reconnected in preparation for this, and to hear how aligned we both are right now on this topic. Because as you said, the Inflation Reduction Act is if it's not already, it's going to be what I refer to as a dining room table conversation very soon. And people are going to want to know how they can do this, how they can take advantage of it, and know that they can work with people that they can trust. And it can be complicated and overwhelming. And I love that you are working with folks on a solution to that problem. So I can't wait to hear more about that.
And we have to wrap in home performance. Going back to what I said before, you got to understand, you got to responsibly reduce the energy you use, and then you can move forward with these other things. Then they become easy. If you don't do that, they can become dissatisfying pretty quickly.
Yeah. Awesome. Anything else you want to share?
I think that's enough for now.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for taking time to talk about your fabulous home. I know anybody that is local to Pittsburgh, or if you're coming to Pittsburgh and you want to reach out and see if there's an opportunity to see his home in person, I'm just going to speak for him and say that he will open his home, because I know he will. Otherwise, look forward to having you back again to talk about all of these other exciting initiatives. And thank you all for being here today. We're going to continue to showcase really awesome people like Bill and all of the other folks that he is supporting to keep building better.